My name is Linda Morrison. I'm 69 years old, a widow, and I live alone in a small house in Asheville, North Carolina. I worked most of my life as a school librarian, surrounded by children, laughter, and the smell of old books, but after my husband, George, passed away 5 years ago, everything in my home turned silent. Too silent. My son, Daniel, 38, and my daughter, Megan, 35, lived in the city, they called sometimes, but the warmth was missing. Still, I told myself they were just busy with their own lives. One chilly October morning, I decided to call Daniel. His phone rang and rang before he finally answered, sounding distracted. "Mom, I'm kinda busy right now. I'll call you later, okay?" I smiled weakly, even though my chest felt tight. "Of course, honey. Take care." But that later never came. That night, as I sat with my cup of tea, scrolling through old photos on Facebook, I noticed a picture of Daniel with a woman I hadn't seen before. The caption said, "Best day ever," and she was wearing a white dress. My heart skipped. I zoomed in. It was a wedding photo. My hands shook as I whispered, "No, he would have told me." The next morning, I called Daniel again, but his number went straight to voicemail. So I tried Megan. She picked up immediately. "Mom, did you see Daniel's post?" Her tone was uneasy. "Yes," I said softly. "When was this?" Megan hesitated. "Yesterday. He didn't want to stress you, Mom. It was kind of sudden." My heart pounded. "Sudden? Megan, I'm his mother. I had the right to know." I could hear Megan take a deep breath. "He said he'd tell you after. Don't be upset." But how could I not be? I raised him alone after George's death. I worked overtime, skipped vacations, and even sold my jewelry so he could buy his first car. And now, he got married without even telling me. I sat on my porch swing, the wind brushing my grey hair, and for the first time in years, I cried openly. That night, I made a decision. I would visit Daniel in person. Whether he liked it or not, he would have to see me. 2 days later, I boarded a bus to Charlotte, carrying a small suitcase and a heavy heart. I reached Daniel's apartment building around noon. When I knocked, a young woman opened the door. She looked startled. "Oh, you must be Linda," she said awkwardly. "I'm Sophie, Daniel's wife." For a second, I couldn't speak. Wife. The word echoed in my head. "Nice to meet you," I finally said. Forcing a smile, Daniel appeared behind her, visibly uncomfortable. "Mom, you didn't tell me you were coming." I looked straight into his eyes. "You didn't tell me you were getting married?" Silence filled the room. Sophie tried to break it. "We were planning a small ceremony. It just happened quickly." I nodded slowly. "And it happened without your mother." My voice cracked. Daniel sighed. "Mom, please, don't make this harder." I picked up my bag and whispered, "I'm not here to fight. I just wanted to see you, and to bless your marriage." His eyes softened for a moment, but then Sophie put her hand on his shoulder and said, "We have guests coming soon. Maybe she can stay at a hotel?" My world froze. My own son didn't say a word. I turned and walked out quietly. That night, I sat in a small motel near the bus station. The neon light outside flickered through the window as I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My face looked tired, but it was the loneliness in my eyes that scared me most. The next morning, I checked out early and went to a nearby park. I sat on a bench, watching families laughing together, parents holding their children's hands. Tears blurred my vision. I pulled out my old phone and saw no missed calls, no messages, not even from Megan. I had become invisible. On my way home, I stopped by a flower shop and bought white lilies, George's favorite. I placed them on his grave that evening and whispered, "I did everything I could for them, George. But maybe I failed." As I walked back home, A stranger at the bus stop noticed my trembling hands and offered his seat. That small kindness broke me again. Maybe I wasn't invisible to everyone, just to those I loved most. A week later, while cleaning my desk, I found an old letter I had written years ago for Daniel. Never sent. It was from the time he left for college. I had written, "No matter where life takes you, remember your roots, your mother's love, and your father's lessons." I read it over and over, realizing how far he had drifted. That night, I decided to write another letter, not to guilt him, but to remind him who I was. I poured my soul into every word, telling him about the nights I went hungry so he could eat, the winters I spent sewing old blankets to keep us warm, and the pride I felt watching him grow. I didn't expect him to respond. I just needed him to know the truth. I sealed the envelope with shaky hands and mailed it the next morning. It felt like sending a part of my heart away. Days turned into weeks, and every time the mail truck passed by my house, I felt my heart skip. I checked the mailbox twice a day. Nothing. I kept hoping Daniel would read my letter and call, maybe even visit. But silence became my new reality one evening. While I was watering the small rose garden George had planted years ago, my phone buzzed. My hands trembled as I answered. "Daniel?" I whispered. But it wasn't him. It was Megan. "Mum, are you okay?" she asked softly. I took a deep breath. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired." She hesitated before saying, "Daniel's been busy with work and Sophie's parents, they came to stay for a while." I swallowed the ache in my throat. "That's wonderful," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. Megan continued, "Mum, don't take it personally. He just wants peace. You know how he is." Her words stabbed me in the chest. Peace, I thought, at the cost of his mother's heart. After the call, I sat on my porch, staring at the stars. The night was quiet, except for the distant sound of a train. I whispered, "George, you'd know what to say. I feel like I've lost him forever." But deep inside, a tiny flicker of hope still lived. One Sunday morning, while I was baking blueberry muffins, there was a knock at my door. My heart leapt. Could it be Daniel? But when I opened it, a young woman stood there. Sophie. She looked nervous, holding a small box. "Mrs. Morrison?" she said softly. "I hope it's okay I came." I nodded, surprised. "Come in." She looked around my humble home, her eyes pausing on the old family photos on the wall. "Daniel doesn't know I'm here," she said, sitting on the couch. "He's been distant lately. I thought maybe it had something to do with you." I stayed silent. Sophie continued, "I found your letter on his desk. He read it. More than once. I think it broke him, Mrs. Morrison. He feels guilty but doesn't know how to face you." Tears welled in my eyes. "He doesn't need to feel guilty," I said quietly. "He just needs to remember I love him." Sophie opened the box she brought. It was full of old photos of Daniel as a child, the ones I thought were lost during the house move years ago. "He kept these," she whispered. My hands trembled as I touched the pictures. "He kept them," I repeated, tears spilling freely now. When she left, she hugged me and said, "Please give him time." For the first time in months, my heart felt lighter. 2 weeks later, while watching the evening news, I heard about a terrible car accident on a highway near Charlotte. My blood ran cold when they mentioned the names, Daniel Morrison and Sophie Morrison. My teacup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. "No," I whispered, gasping for air. My legs gave out beneath me. I called every hospital in Charlotte until one finally confirmed. They were both admitted, Daniel in critical condition. I packed my bag and rushed to the bus station, my heart pounding with fear. The 3-hour journey felt endless. When I reached the hospital, The sterile smell made me dizzy. I found Sophie in a wheelchair, bruised but conscious. She looked up and burst into tears. "He's in surgery," she said. "It's bad." I held her trembling hand. "He's strong," I whispered, my voice breaking. "He'll make it." Hours passed like years until a doctor finally walked out. His face said it all. "We did everything we could," he said quietly. My world stopped. I couldn't hear anything after that. My son, my Daniel, was gone. I fell to my knees as Sophie cried beside me. The hall felt cold, empty, and endless. After the funeral, the house felt more silent than ever before. Every corner carried his memory. The chair where he used to do his homework, the backyard swing where he once read stories to Megan. Sophie stayed with me for a few days. We both grieved in silence, two women bound by love for the same man. One evening, as we sat at the dining table, I noticed she wasn't eating. "You need to take care of yourself," I said softly. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "He always said he wanted to make things right with you. He told me he was planning to surprise you on Thanksgiving." I covered my mouth, sobbing quietly. "Oh, Daniel," I whispered. Sophie took my hand and said, "You were his home, Mrs. Morrison. Even if he couldn't say it, he never stopped loving you." Those words broke me and healed me at the same time. That night, I went to Daniel's old room, sat on his bed, and whispered, "I forgive you. My son, I always did." The moonlight fell softly across his framed graduation photo. It felt like he was finally at peace. And maybe so was I. A week later, Sophie handed me an envelope she found in Daniel's drawer. "It's for you," she said quietly. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was his handwriting, messy but familiar. "Mum, I know I hurt you. I thought keeping you away from my new life would protect you from seeing my struggles. But I was wrong. You are the only person who ever truly stood by me. I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you soon." I couldn't breathe as I read those words over and over. My tears fell on the ink, smudging it slightly. He wrote this just days before the accident. I pressed the letter to my heart and whispered, "You already made it up, my son. You always did." Later, I framed the letter and placed it on my bedside table. Every night, I read it before sleeping. I realized something powerful that day. Love doesn't end with goodbye. It lingers in the small things: a photo, a letter, a memory that refuses to fade. Daniel might have left this world, but his love lived on through Sophie, through me, and through every heartbeat that remembered him. After Sophie left for her parents' house, I spent most of my days in silence. The walls of my home seemed to echo Daniel's laughter, his footsteps, his voice calling out, "Mum, where's my jacket?" I avoided his room for weeks, until one rainy afternoon, when the loneliness became too heavy, I finally opened the door. Dust had started to gather on his old bookshelf. On the desk, there was a sealed cardboard box labelled in his handwriting. "For Mum." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were small things that only a son who truly loved his mother would save. An old recipe book I'd lost years ago, a photo of George and me from our wedding day, the handmade card Daniel had made in first grade that said, "Best Mum ever." At the bottom of the box was a USB drive. I plugged it into my old laptop. There was a single video file. When I clicked play, Daniel's face appeared on the screen, smiling. "Hey, Mum," he said softly. "If you're watching this, it means I finally found the courage to tell you what I should have said a long time ago." My breath caught in my throat as he continued, "You were right. Family isn't about perfection. It's about love. Thank you for never giving up on me." I couldn't stop crying. It felt as though he had come back, just for a moment, to hold my heart together again. Megan came to visit soon after. When she walked in, she hugged me tightly for the first time in years. I'm so sorry, Mum, she whispered, her voice shaking. I should have been here more. I let him pull away, and I followed. I stroked her hair gently. We all make mistakes, sweetheart, I said, holding back tears. We spent hours talking about Daniel, about Sophie, about everything we had lost and everything we still had left. Megan had been going through her own struggles, a divorce, the stress of her job. But she never told me because she didn't want to burden me. I realized how broken communication had become in our family, how love had turned into silence. That evening, we cooked together like old times. As we sat at the table, I said quietly, "We can't change what happened, Megan, but we can choose what we do next." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Then I choose to come home more, Mum. I don't want any more regrets." That night, as she slept in her old room, I looked at Daniel's framed photo and whispered, "You see my son? Your sister came home. You brought her back." One Sunday morning, I visited the small church where George and I used to attend service. The last time I'd gone there was for his funeral. As I entered, the familiar scent of candles and old wood filled my senses. The priest, Father Michael, saw me and smiled warmly. "Linda, it's been a while," he said kindly. "How are you holding up?" I hesitated, then said, "Some days are better than others." He nodded knowingly. Grief never truly leaves, but it teaches us where love really lives. I sat quietly in the last pew, staring at the stained glass window. The sunlight filtered through, casting colours across the floor. I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, something I hadn't felt since Daniel's death. After the service, a young couple came up to me. "You're Daniel's mother, right?" the man asked. I nodded, surprised. "He once helped us when our car broke down near his office," the woman said. "He talked about you the whole time. He said his mum was his hero." My throat tightened as tears filled my eyes. I smiled weakly and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for telling me." That day, I realized Daniel had carried my love with him wherever he went, even when he didn't show it. Spring arrived quietly, bringing color back into the world. I decided to create something in Daniel's memory. A small garden behind the house, Megan helped me plant roses, sunflowers, and marigolds, all of Daniel's favorites. We placed a small wooden bench in the center and a sign that read, "Love never dies. It just changes form." Every morning, I'd sit there with my coffee, feeling the wind rustle through the leaves, almost like Daniel whispering, "I'm still here, Mom." Sophie visited one afternoon with a small box. "I wanted you to have this," she said softly. Inside was Daniel's wedding ring. "He wanted to give it to you," she added, her voice trembling. I held the ring close to my heart. "He already gave me everything I ever needed," I whispered. As we sat together in the garden, Sophie looked around and smiled. "This place feels peaceful," she said. I nodded. "It's where love lives now." Megan joined us with lemonade, and for the first time in years, the three of us laughed together. The pain was still there, but it no longer felt unbearable. It had softened into something almost gentle, something healing. Months later, I stood by George's and Daniel's graves, holding a bouquet of white lilies and yellow roses. The sky was painted in shades of gold as the sun began to set. "You'd be proud of us, George," I whispered. "Megan's doing better. Sophie visits often, and I'm finally learning to live again." I placed the flowers down and smiled faintly. "And you, my sweet boy," I said, looking at Daniel's name carved in stone. "You taught me that love doesn't fade. It just waits quietly in another room." I closed my eyes, letting the wind carry my words away. As I turned to leave, I felt a strange warmth wrap around me, almost like someone's arms I didn't need to turn back. I knew it was him. That evening, I returned home and sat in the garden. The sun dipped behind the trees, Painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I whispered to myself, life goes on, and love stays. Then I smiled through the tears. Family isn't about being perfect or always being together. It's about forgiving, remembering, and holding on, even when life forces you apart. True love survives every goodbye,